Hello, everybody, and welcome to Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to. I'm Brandon Ellis, your host, and with me, of course, is Miss Beth. Hey, Beth.
Hey, Brandon. How are you today?
Good. So we have a fun-filled day. Got a lot to talk about. Want to welcome everybody back. It's been a minute, but we're keeping up with our one show per quarter rate.
That's right. And
Yeah.
we have another special guest today.
And we're kicking off a new special guest, and there's also actually two special guests.
Yes.
One's waving in the background.
That's right.
And so at the conclusion of our last podcast, I mentioned about maybe talking a little bit about robots.
That's right.
So kick us off with our topic today.
So today's title is Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to be difficult.
That's right.
Our special guest today is Moritz Garroz with
Hello.
Elite Robots.
Hello, Beth. Hello, Brandon. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I didn't give you the horns. Let me give you the horns.
Wow, yeah, I like the
There we
horse.
go. I like the horse too. So Moritz is the North and South America General Director of Collaborative and Industrial Robotics, Integrated Solutions, and Automation at Elite Robots. Moritz's passion is helping companies achieve the best desired products they want to develop at an adaptable budget with the best quality and with a profitable model. When Moritz isn't working towards completion of his MBA, which he's already done.
Done, yeah. We need to
How
update that.
Yeah, I know. You're on your second one now? Or,
Yeah.
you
No, I
that
already
was your
finished
second
two. I
one.
think
Okay.
2 is enough.
Nice. 2 is enough. Well, Moritz is, he's got his master's in supply chain management
Yes.
now, and he likes to expand his knowledge around e-commerce, cloud-based technology, computer programming, and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Moritz.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. And adding a little bit, not only that, I have a background in satellites, and that's how I started. I'm an engineer, telecommunications engineer, and then I started doing specialization of satellites in China, and I lived in China for 12 years. That's what bring me to Elite, and start satellites. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
wow.
And then start to doing robotics, and I fall in love with the automation world, and now here I am.
Nice.
Yep.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know
Thank you.
Elite is too.
Thank you.
So, yeah, only 2 master's degrees.
Only
you know.
two. I don't think it's enough.
I'm sorry, because I've got none. Yeah. No, that's an impressive accolades. I appreciate you walking us through that a little bit, Beth. So we get to know Moritz a little bit today, and more importantly, we get to know the product, the Elite Robot product. As we get into this, though, of course, our goal today is to talk about how this can help the industrial manufacturing plants, but also maybe not just industrial automation. And so it's really interesting what's happening in the whole collaborative robot market. That market is, I don't know, it's not mature yet, but it's been around for a few years. There's a lot of names, not name brands.
Yeah.
There's certainly companies that have been in it longer than others, but we're really excited about the Elite product for some very specific reasons as a distributor for Elite. Now, you all know that I don't make this all about salesy podcast, but I'm excited about it because I think it brings a lot of good things for users, the end users, again, in the industrial automation space without question, but also in some other very interesting spaces. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the background, though, of Elite. Walk us through that.
Yeah, well, Elite Robots is not a new company. First, I always like to tell this to everybody, okay? Elite Robots started more than 15 years ago, doing, at the beginning, industrial robots, like end-of-the-arm tooling, some kind of SCADA robots, and it's thus until 2016 when the company decided to found himself as an Elite Robots, okay? And launching first series in 2017, which is the easy series of only collaborative robots, okay? Elite Robots is a global automation solutions provider, but yet also as a cost-effective solution, okay?
Yeah.
We have, and like as a motto, which is like automation just not need to be a big investment, like it's just to believe it in the market, okay?
Well, robotics traditionally, I mean, and I'm going back decades.
Yeah.
Especially industrial robots has always and traditionally been a very, very large investment, and so it's difficult. In fact, only certain industries had robots for many years.
Yes, and that's a traditional way of thinking. The robotics needs a lot of money to automate some processes, and that's why we came to the picture. That's why the cobot itself comes to giving that flexibility, that easy to install, easy to program, and accessible for everybody who wants to automate, not only those big factories or big industries or automotive pharmaceuticals that you used to see the robots on there. Now you can see it serving coffee. You can see a robot just doing bartending with 300 more drinks, and they are own cobots. And this is because the cobot technology is safe to work hand to hand with humans, make it safe to work with, and that's why you can introduce this new product, which is not new, but it's new trend now. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Into the new retail or commerce. That's why we say it's not only for industrial manufacturing. Can be in day-to-day activities right now.
Yeah. So I hadn't told you this. I hadn't shared this with you. This is certainly not on our outline. But Beth invented a drinking game for us.
Yeah, with the robot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, with the term cobot. So as we were talking about co-ops, and this goes back a couple of years now. We've been doing this podcast for a few years because I have always said I've never seen a collaborative robot project where the robot was truly being used collaboratively.
Okay.
There's almost always, at least in the U.S., there's almost always some level of safety. And the reason is because, and of course, again, I'm focused in on industrial automation, industrial manufacturing. Because there's, even if it's a safety light scanner, a light curtain, a safety mat, there's usually something. Because in the United States, of course, safety, not that it's not important in other countries, but we have regulatory boards that make sure and we have very stiff penalties if you don't make sure that everything's safe. And so people tend to take extra care when it comes to the safety. And, of course, that does change from market segment to market segment.
Yeah.
But considering that, the drinking game was, every time I said, I've never seen a collaborative robot used collaboratively, she would always say,
take a drink.
Yeah.
Take a drink. Okay.
So that's always been kind of our thing. And so But let's expand on that. What's the difference between a collaborative robot and an industrial robot?
Well, the most easy way to differentiate collaborative robots with industrial robots is actually the installation. By law or by common knowledge, the industrial robots need to be fenced and need to be work under safety
fencing,
fencing,
guarding.
Guarding or something.
Yeah.
The difference with the cobots is they don't need to be fenced. Can be working side by side with the human. That's the main feature because they have something that we call collision detection sensors. That if somebody touch the robot will say, "Hey, somebody's touching me. I'm gonna stop." Otherwise, like in the other hand, the industrial robots they don't have that. So they touch somebody. They don't realize there's somebody there or something there, and they're continue crushing that object or person, let's say, for being in that position, crushing until non-stop because they just simply don't know.
Yeah, well, so we've talked about that. Industrial robots are really set up to sense robot collision, meaning with the part, the work piece, the guarding, things of that nature.
Yes.
A person is a lot softer than usually the tooling or the work piece or the guarding. And so, in some regards, though, that's advantageous. I've been in situations where they say we don't want the collaborative robots because if the box comes in upside down, it still tries to push the thing, and it punches through the box to put the part in the box and pulls right out, and it gets to another one, and it doesn't stop, and then this crumpled up box just moves on, and it doesn't stop the process. So in those cases, of course, the emphasis is they don't want the downtime.
Yes.
So the collaborative robots do have additional sensors, be it torque sensors or whatnot,
differential
force sensors, things of that nature, and that varies across the brands.
Yeah.
That can be more sensitive about coming into a collision with something that's soft, like human tissue.
Even some right now, I've seen new technologies that they have like safe skin on the robot.
So that's what I was going to get into.
Huh.
So the tactile type sensing is still a new thing. I think I've seen a couple of people talk about it, but I haven't seen it demonstrated.
I don't see a industrial application on it, but I think it's kind of cool.
But if you're doing coffee shops and things of that nature, bartending, then now that's a different.
Or the new application that you're seeing is they're doing rehab, like for arms. I'm doing physical therapy, all these kind of applications. Probably that could be a good feature for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna move your leg around, but don't touch me.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's interesting. So as you were getting into, but that's the thing that we're seeing is these collaborative robots are. I think it's fair to say collaborative robots started in industrial manufacturing.
For sure.
And they're still used very much so.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as AGVs and how well they are kind of built for that and things of that nature. So that's coming up. But certainly, if you're only looking at this as I was when you invented the drinking game, is industrial automation. That's what we look at is industrial. Most collaborative robots, it's not really. You can't put it all together to say that any collaborative robot can be shifted right between two people for any application and suddenly it's safe, like putting a person in there.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's still programmed, it's still moving things around, and you still have to do a safety audit on that process. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, cobots I think get a bad rep compared to industrial robots because when you do that safety audit, at least here in the United States, it usually equates to one thing. The compromise is you have to slow the speed. Mm-hmm. And so everybody says collaborative robots are slow. Yeah. Collaborative robots can be very fast.
Yes.
I mean,
not competing with the industrial fast, but can be fast.
Can be fast.
Can be as fast as a normal average human work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're right. That's a tremendous difference to make. Industrial robots are all about fast and accurate, which means not safe.
Yes.
They have to be guarded.
Yeah.
Because, in fact, the number one cause of accidents on the most industrial manufacturing floors is industrial robots.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's despite dead man switches on the pendants and all this kind of stuff. And it's usually the maintenance folks because they're inside. Because we don't want operators inside.
Yeah.
They can be inside, so they've got the bypasses all safe, but certainly meets the deal with the bypasses and stuff. And they're holding the teach pendant, and a program goes wrong, and the robot just all of a sudden, very fast and very accurately, comes around, and before they can let go of the dead man switch, it's got them.
Wow.
And maybe it's not fatalities, but certainly injuries that can happen.
Yeah.
And so those are industrial robots. There's no question. A collaborative robot, they can be used in a safer manner than with minimal guarding than an industrial robot. So that is a definite difference.
Yeah. One of the main difference I will say also is the installation or the flexibility to install a robot. Usually industrial robots, you need to change or modify your layout in your manufacturer side, which means investment. On the opposite, the cobot can be standalone in a pillar working together. You don't need to have so many or changes into your production line or layout in your factory, which is why mostly of the new trend is including more cobots into automate these small things that they are doing by manual that can be done by a robot. I think you have a very funny way to measure how a cobot can be implemented into an application. Seems like you need to have one hand, something like that. I don't remember very well.
Brandology.
Yeah, Brandology.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Brandology.
That's right.
We haven't done that in a while.
Nope. So you got to be blindfolded.
Yeah, blindfolded.
Have one hand behind your back, standing in one spot, and
wear a mitten.
Mitten.
And wear a
That's
mitten.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, you can replace for
Easy.
Yeah. It's very easy to use a robot for that application. And the concept is robots require for the easier, the robot will be an easier application if, number one, the part is fixtured.
Yes.
Which means it's always in a repeatable place.
Yeah.
That means we can have a blindfold. We're always reaching into the same place.
The same.
The second thing is the mitten. We can just pick it up. We don't have to have dexterity of fingers. It's not to say if you have an application that requires that, you can't do it. It's just to say these are the easiest and the lowest cost, the biggest return on investment for these type of applications. And then one arm behind the back because we only have one hand.
Yeah.
And then glued to the floor. So if we have to reach over here and take a step,
Yeah,
now we
that you
gotta
need
have a
to.
seventh
Yeah,
axis.
you need to have adding something else.
Yeah, and so those are the things that we would add on those applications. It's not saying it's impossible, but if you can't wear the blindfold, you need a vision system.
Yeah.
Then it's questions of, is it a 2D vision system or a 3D vision
Yeah.
system? The price changes.
Yeah.
Do you need a standard gripper, or do you need something that's got more intricate,
Yeah.
capabilities? And then do you need a seventh axis?
If you need mobility or an AMR or an HEV.
Yeah. So let's keep rolling on that. So before we jump into those kind of use cases, let's talk a bit about the growth and development that Elite, because Elite,
We signed on about a year ago.
Yeah,
was
we did.
August of 23.
Yeah.
and Elite is not a new company,
not a new company.
but it is kind of new to the U.S.
To the U.S. Yes.
Yeah, and so with that in mind, kind of catch us up on who Elite is, and then we'll get into more of just general collaborative type things.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, Elite Robot, like we were talking about, we are becoming and we are growing exponentially. We have developed or deployed more than 15,000 units globally right now.
That's amazing.
We start with a small manufacturing site in Shanghai, and now we have 5 facilities of manufacturing. We can produce 200 sets a week.
Mm.
Wow.
Okay, and right now we have another thing that any other brand has, which is we have the highest rate of research and development by ourselves. If you see the breakdown of our talent on the company globally, 45% of them is only for research and development,
Wow.
which give us that flexibility to customize some special projects. And we're going to talk about the case of studies that any other brand, because they other produce and they assemble, but they usually source some parts. We mostly don't. 95% of our robots are self-development or self-production. So that gives us that advantage on the innovation that we always have. And that's something that we as a lead robot just like to say, that innovation is in our DNA.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why because we always put in the research and development. I think in the last year we launched more than 10 new products. And you're always calling me, Brand, like, you have a new product already.
Yeah,
You have a new product already.
So how many total? And I'm jumping ahead here. We're getting into the product line stuff. Well, let's save that for the product line stuff. So Elite.
Well, I was impressed by how many patents.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have right now more than 250 patents around the world. And taking back again into the growing, we are the only Chinese manufacturer that have a subsidiary office in each continent.
Yeah.
In the U.S., we have one where we are not in the city that we are in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
The same as here, elliTek. But we also have a small office in Coahuila, Mexico, in Torreon, for covering Mexican market. And we have an office in Germany. We have an office in Japan. We have, I think, Beijing, Suzhou, Shenzhen, Shanghai, Nanjing. 5 or 6 offices in
Asia.
In Asia. In China specifically.
So the robot is Chinese made, Chinese owned.
Yeah, manufacturing in China. Yeah.
And so I always just go ahead and get that out in the open.
Rip that Band-Aid.
Yeah. because in the United States, we have seen a lot of products that have come that were Chinese made, of Chinese origin. And I say this because you and I went through this together. Because at the beginning, when we were looking at our relationship with you all, I was critical.
Skeptical.
Skeptical. There you go. And so as we began to go through that, I just was impressed, and there were all these things that I felt like, as far as a company goes, there are certainly cultural differences between China and the Asian market and Europe and the U.S., right? And none of those are the same. There's a few things that are maybe similar, but we each have our own cultural thing.
Yes.
And so what I felt like Elite was doing, and that's the reason we've seen such an explosion of growth in the U.S., is they are actually in tune with the cultural differences between our countries and what we need here and what we're dealing with here. Because we do have an OSHA, we do have things that we have to deal with, all this kind of stuff, and they've taken that into consideration with a lot of it. You mentioned the R&D. Their R&D, a lot of it is devoted specifically to what our needs are here in the U.S.
Yes.
That don't as necessarily line up with the same needs in Asia or in Europe.
Exactly. Some of the things that we learned during the path of introducing our brand into different markets, like I say, we're in globally, it's learning for what are the good, the good ways of doing business in each different region.
Yeah.
For example, I can say something here that the industry is suffering is the changing of labor. The workers change jobs very fast and very common. Which means you train, the companies need to train somebody.
Yeah.
And this somebody, sooner or later, very fast change.
Yeah. They go somewhere else.
Yeah. And then the company needs to invest again in the training for another new worker.
Yeah.
We saw that, we learned about that and say, okay, so what we going to do about this? So we offer free training for life.
Free training for life, yeah.
That's amazing.
So for any company that's got, and I was impressed with that. That was
turnover.
one of the impressive things.
Yeah.
I was like, because it's insightful. To honestly, that's not the first thing that we think about. We think, from my perspective, when we're if I'm on the plant side and I'm thinking in terms of what kind of robot, what kind of things should we get. I don't think much about training, but training is a substantial cost.
Yes.
And it's something I've had so many conversations with so many plant managers and plant presidents about is we train these people up, and then the company down the street grabs them for an extra 50 cents dollar on the hour.
Even if you don't think about it because it's not something that you can certainly see, but this changing of your staff is reducing your efficiency.
Oh yeah.
And your production.
Yeah.
So this is what we want to aim. No?
Yeah.
We are looking forward to be efficient.
Yeah.
And to be a good quality.
Yeah.
And to be accessible for everybody.
Yeah.
So these are our three mottos. That's why we invest a lot in research, in development. That's why we invest a lot in training, and that's why we invest a lot in maintaining those costs to be accessible for all kind of companies, not only those big names that that they used to have or are used to work with robots. No, we're aiming them, and we're aiming everybody who wants to automate with cost-effective solutions. Okay, and actually, our talking about our EC series. EC series is we want the price globally to be the quality price radio price in the world. So we are the one who offer more quality and less price in the world with our EC series.
Wow, that's amazing.
Being a product to be reliable, to be efficient, consistent. That is the three things that any industry needs.
Yep. And then, of course, we were talking about the differences between industrial robots and collaborative robots. Certainly is the case with Elite. But one big difference is an industrial robot training class is usually a 3 to 4, maybe even 5-day training. And then there's level 1, level 2, level 3. How long is the training for an Elite robot?
8 hours.
8 hours. Actually, probably 6 hours. The last 2 hours is having fun with the robot.
Yeah, just playing and do some exercises and
right.
Try to do the blindfolded one hand and the middle thing.
Yeah. So certainly that is one big difference with collaborative robots that the industrial robot market has not caught up to.
Yes,
is the ease of interface, and I think that's again with each to be fair with multiple brands that are out there of collaborative robots, that interface is another is an advantage. And then the one big other thing that distinguishes an industrial robot with a collaborative robot is I think you all call it I call it direct teach.
The free drive or drag teach.
Drag teach, yes,
Yeah.
that's what you. So that puts the robot again, because of these sensors that are meant for safety.
Yeah.
It can also sense the force of gravity, and so by putting it into this, I call it a direct teach mode, the robot senses the gravitational forces that are against it, and it allows the robot to hold a posture to where it doesn't just crumple to the ground or float away. It just floats, and now we can grab the end of it and we can move it around, and we can move it physically. We don't have to remember complex dead man switches and things of that nature. We don't have to remember to hit shift and this and all this to clear errors and turn keys and those kind of things. Now, it's according to the series. The EC series does have a switch on the pendant, but the CS series, which we're going to talk about the differences, has a more tablet style.
I got a surprise for you.
Oh, all right.
We're going to hear something here first.
Yes, the new models of the CS, it comes with the 2 buttons, the same as the EC.
Okay.
So you don't need to grab the teach pendant all the time, activating the free drive, and you just press the button.
So you're installing the button on the end of the arm tooling.
Exactly the same as the EC series. All the new models are coming with that feature as well.
So what we have up here, as you can see behind Moritz, is actually the CS series, and that's one of our demos. So now you're telling me I got to do another demo.
Yeah, you need to get another demo, and with the new teach pendant as well.
Yeah. So it's got a teach button on the teach pendant, whereas the EC series has a button on the end, up near the end of arm tooling, and so by depressing that button, it will enter this
free drive.
Yeah. Again, I call it direct teach, but where you can move it. And so why is that a big deal? Because of the training aspect.
Yeah.
I have been with folks that maintenance troubleshooters that on site where they're using a robot, an industrial robot, and they probably have 4 or 5 different brands of industrial robots that they have to know, and so that's already a challenge. But remembering key sequences, how you hold it, all this kind of stuff, what coordinate system I need to be in, all this kind of thing, to be able to jog the thing.
And the command.
Yeah, just to be able to make a small correction on a point, 1 point. At this point, it's not picking it up just right. It needs to move just a quarter inch to the left or the right, and to be able to say move to the point. Okay, I see where it's off, and put it in direct teach and just move it. Is less perishable as far as a training step. You can remember that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've had folks tell me, I wish I could just take this thing with industrial robots. I wish I could just take it and just move it.
Yeah, and when let's see, you fine-tune this exact position, you're good to go, but now you need to go 180 degrees to the other side.
Yeah.
So you need to go the teach pendant and move the industrial robot all the way. With the cobot, you just grab it.
Move it over.
And then that's it. And then you can
fine tune it with the jogs and stuff like that. So you have both worlds, and that is only possible with Cobot because of those
extra sensors,
collision sensors, which are being used now to hold that posture. Because in an industrial robot, if you release the torques, turn the motors off and release the brakes, the whole thing would
just like in Toy Story when the humans arrive to the room, all the toys come to the floor.
They all collapse to the ground. That's a great illustration. That's about what it would look like. And so that is again, just talking about some differences between cobots, collaborative robots, and industrial robots.
Energy, power input is also another big difference between industrial robots. Usually they work with certain amount of energy, and the cobots are following this trending of being eco green energy footprint. So these guys right here, our cobots, they work from in average consumption just for 200 watts for the smaller version to 1,000 for the biggest. So if you see this is the same consumption of a LCD TV or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And in peak times, you get it up to 3,500 watts. That is electric kettle.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So actually, using cobots, then you also doing that.
Yeah.
Efficient and reducing the footprint of energy consumption in the world. So actually, that's something that is being trending for cobots. well.
Well, that's a good.
That's a good point. I
Yeah.
hadn't even thought about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That needs to be marketed a little bit better by me.
Yeah, there you go. You're marketing.
I
Yeah.
know. But I learned something new today.
That's right,
So.
that's right. So let's go on into the
Product
yeah,
specification.
the products. Yeah, the different types of projects.
Well, I would like to start with the Easy series
Right.
to go chronologically in how Elite robots have been growing. In 2017, we launched Easy series. This robot has been our workhorse. I mean, it's a very stable robot, very cost efficient, and this robot opened us the door to get that market. It's showing itself our background in industrial robotics.
Yeah.
That's why you see the teach pendant is a little bit bigger. It's
Yeah.
more like this Japanese teach pendants kind of style, light line kind of teaching, and you have that interface that it's very similar like C# or to do the scripts. No,
Mm-hmm.
we use Lua, which is our base programming language.
Mm-hmm.
The interface is not that intuitive, but it's following that industrial kind
If
of
you've been
background.
using an industrial robot
Yes.
This
with
would- you
industrial
pick it up
pendant,
like that.
it's very similar.
You're gonna
very,
catch
very
it
similar.
immediately.
Mhm.
Okay.
Which, by the way, I don't remember if you made this point about Elite, but you all started in industrial robots.
yeah. That's
And so that's the reason. That's another reason I think that another point of impression that was made on me is the EC, and I want you to continue down that road. But the EC series and their background started in industrial robot. It didn't start by just trying to develop another cobot.
exactly.
And so they took a lot of the industrial robot know-how
Mhm.
and said, why wouldn't we also use this in a collaborative robot?
Exactly.
And that's different, I think.
And that was the niche, actually. That's why
Yeah.
when we started the Elite robot and they were doing industrial robots and end-of-the-arm tool, articulated arms, and they say, why we don't do a collaborative robot, but with the same features of an industrial, just fixing those ones that the industrial doesn't have.
Yeah,
So they do, and that's why Easy Series came,
right.
like the Frankenstein that we created in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's
Which
why
is a great product, by the way.
I love it.
Yeah.
I like both, but Elite Robot has that it can show you a little bit of the whole two ways of cobots, which is the one who's following the industrial kind of background or the new trendy 3D visualization, interactive UI, that is the CS. That is the other kind of
Yeah.
ways. So we usually come when we talk to distributors or talk to the end users, we tell them, do you have robots in your site? Okay, what kind of robot? No, I have industrial robots. Okay, so let's go to EC. It's going to be very easy for you.
Yeah.
So we offered that possibility. That's why we usually say we have the widest range of products that any other collaborative robot has in the market.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 series, and each of them we have different kind of models. 3, 6, 8, 12, 16, 18, 20, 25 kilogram payload.
Yeah.
Different reach, going from 600 millimeters to 1.9 meters.
Yeah. Nearly
Reach.
2 meters.
2 meter
Meters on
reach.
the
The new CS 520, which
Yeah.
only have 5 joints.
Yeah.
That's another product. I think you I don't know if you saw already.
Needing
the-
more joints.
Less joints.
Oh,
I have
less.
5 just for palletizing solutions
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
you don't need to have that extra joint
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
NFX
okay.
because it's always
Yeah,
working.
so it's a 5-axis instead of 6-axis.
yes.
But still, even with the, I can't remember the models now, but 1.9 meters at 4
4
kilograms.
kilograms. And that specific model I usually like to talk about because that one is specific customization for a big client.
Yeah.
I don't want to say names, but
That's-
it's one of the biggest airplanes manufacturers in the world.
yeah.
So they need a robot with long reach, but not necessarily big payload because what they're going to do is just inspect the planes.
Yeah. They're
Of-
inspecting parts.
Yeah.
But still, 4 kilograms. Now let's put that in good old U.S. units.
Yeah.
That's 8.5 to 9 pounds. Let's
Yeah.
just say it that way. So a 9-pound payload, is at 2 meters.
Yeah.
Almost nearly
Almost
2
2
meters.
meters. Yeah.
is
quite a reach.
substantial.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So
to be
we
able
can,
to hold that.
Yeah, so we can use that also. I mean, inspection, certainly you've got a camera out there, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But we can also use that for dispensing,
Yes.
spraying applications,
Spraying applications.
whether it's adhesives, paints, whatever. Well, I don't know about paints, but I don't want to put us into a flammable.
No, you can.
Can you?
You can. You just wear sleeves, and that's it. Like
Yeah.
a protective cloth, and it can be probably the different type of chemicals, probably not flammable ones.
Yeah, it's got you don't want you want to.
Yeah. Needs to be safe.
Yeah, yeah. So so all right, so let's keep the CS series and then the
So
EC
okay,
series.
this Easy series is this one that gives us the flexibility, the reliability. It was a consistent robot. They give us the doors open to all the big manufacturers and all the big automotive, which is I think is our biggest industry that we're serving right now. And then because we have that background, one of the things that I mentioned before, the core of research. So we research in the market, listening, hearing what the market is telling us, say, okay, what happened with those that don't have that industrial background? So they seem this one is a little bit old.
Yeah.
It seems like a Game Boy instead of a tablet. The kids are growing right now with an iPad in their hand, so they know how to handle this and say, okay. So we listen to them and we launch the CS series, which is the one
and the CS again, it's got a pendant.
Yeah, have a pendant.
And there's some that have other brands out there, not throwing off on them, just talking about the differences in the design.
Yeah.
That are very much more tablet based.
Yes.
And so for me personally, it's always been a little bit of a question of how durable is it, because especially in industrial space, things drop, they get stepped on, they get knocked on, that kind of stuff. How much of a drop, how much of a step, how much of a whack can this thing take and it not shatter? But in our case, that pendant, of course, you said there's a new pendant now.
Yeah.
Does it look similar to that still?
Exactly the same, just they have the dead man switch on the back and the jogging buttons like we have in the EC, because, again, listening to the market, they say, oh, I like your new product, but I still need these two buttons to jog axis by axis directly. No need to press on the screen. So we put those buttons.
Oh, so there's jog buttons on the back.
On the back, and you have the handle for the dead man switch.
Yeah.
Just like this EC,
but
now with the ECS.
See, this is what I'm talking about. I've always said, and God bless America, but we're lazy, and we're lazy because we want things to be easier, and so the fact that they are listening to that, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but other countries don't always listen to what we are asking for.
I don't want to. I don't want to be that guy. Okay,
yeah.
But yes, the proud is something that is in the market.
Yeah.
So and not only in this industry, in every industry. So I'm proud of my product, and I don't want to change it just because you're telling me that there's something that can be improved.
Yeah.
So for me to do that improvement requires
a lot. Yeah.
We are not like that because we have 45% of people just waiting to innovate.
Yeah.
Just we are 45% of our workers are guys that are thinking how to improve things, how to make new products. So they are there. Okay, well, what we have next? What we have next? What we have next?
Yeah.
So that's why we can do this kind of new, and always say that we are the company who has better chances to customize your needs into a cobot. I don't think somebody else can. For example, right now we are working in a project that we are doing a robot arm made on stainless steel alliation with chromium for corrosive environments.
Oh.
So our robots, the CS series, they can be upgradable. They are standard IP65, but you can upgrade it free of charge. That's something that we also have to IP68. So the IP68 gives you that resistance to water, to splash, to pressure. Even you can submerge the robot in 1 meter depth into water. So that gives you that capacity. But then we saw that in certain pharmaceuticals environment, they use kind of chemicals that they react to aluminum, for example, which is the body of the robot.
Yeah.
So we say, okay, I want your robot, but I cannot have it because my chemicals are gonna react, and sooner or later they're gonna be gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so which product you needed? Oh, we need probably chromium or probably stainless steel 304 or 316.
Yeah.
Okay, let me figure out. I relay that to my rat labs there, working on thinking things,
Yeah.
and they guys, oh, we got it, we can do it.
Oh,
Okay, so these kind of things we do it all the
that's
time.
amazing.
Now that's not a standard product option.
That's not a standard
No,
product
yeah.
option. It's
but it
customized.
is possible.
Who knows? If the market is because
No,
again,
I mean, it is possible if another customer has
sure,
a similar need.
for sure,
That's something we could get them to.
That's why, and again, I'm answering you again with the 6.4. The 6.4 say, who's gonna need a 4 robot with long reach? I mean, that
Yeah.
makes no sense. Okay, this company came, we did it for you, but then the market started like, hey,
Yeah.
I can use this in 3D scanners. I can do this in panels,
Yeah.
like the panels moving or handling that there need to be big, long robots, and
Yeah.
and then cobot is less.
Well, we've got an application, a customer now that's evaluating it for spray adhesion.
Yeah.
Onto a large product.
So we make that product that wasn't meant to be standard. Now it's available standard.
Yeah.
So we can jump this because we have that flexibility. To
Well,
do
you
that.
and I have been talking for year and a half.
A little bit more, I think.
Yeah, year
A
and a
little
half.
bit more.
And I think since then you all have rolled out 4 or 5 new models at least.
We saw another opportunity, which is the oil industry, gas.
Mhm.
So we need to have an explosion-proof product. We launched the CSX, which is the explosive
Oh, really?
explosion-proof product. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. We have it already on the 3 kilograms, 6 kilograms, 12, 20, and 25 on the CS explosion-proof.
Well, there's again, and up to 25, and I think you got a 28.
No,
explosive
25 right now is our
Okay.
biggest model.
Okay.
We are thinking getting the 30, but I don't think it's gonna be soon. But yeah,
But
the
still,
25 is our biggest
up
model.
to 25 kilograms. Quick math. That's 55 to 65, somewhere in there pounds.
Yeah,
Which is substantial.
It is.
And then you still got direct teach, things of that nature. And as you pointed out, it's not as fast as an industrial robot, but it is fast. I think most of those are getting up close to, or they are 2 meters per second.
Yeah. Again, this is something that I always like to do. So you're saying cobots are not fast? Yeah, we don't want to compete with industrial fast,
Right.
but right now we launched a new series that is coming on next month, September. We are what now? In 2 months.
2 months.
It's gonna be the CSA. It's already launched for domestic market in China. The feedback has been amazing, and we're gonna be launching overseas right now, which is the CSA
A,
of advanced.
advanced. Okay.
Oh,
So with this robot, we're gonna be reaching 3.9 meters per
Good
second,
gracious day.
and the joint, 1, 2, 3, the third joint is gonna be a little bit offset, which gives that. Actually, how we come to this model is this for the research and development. We needed a robot who can rotate over his own axis without crashing or collisioning with the base.
Yeah.
So we offset that elbow a little bit better, so the robot can do 360 degrees on that axis. But when we were testing, we realized that this offset is going to give it an extra counterbalance and improve the speed, almost double.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So we say, okay, now we have a new product called CSA, which is advanced, and we can reach 3.6 to 3.9 meters per second on the TCP.
That's
Wow.
So now we are starting to get, I mean, honestly, not all industrial robots. In fact, I would say 80% of industrial robot applications are not moving at their top speeds.
Yes.
You're starting to get to 3.5 meters per second, and suddenly you are getting close to being able to hit the performance of probably of those 80% of industrial applications. You're probably 60%
Yeah.
that you could do with those speeds,
Yeah.
with the advantages of the robot, collaborative robot. Because if you're moving at 3.5 meters per second, or even 3 meters per second, even 2 meters per second, you're guarding that robot.
Yeah, the advanced version must have collision detection in every joint.
Yeah. Yeah, but it also needs to have some guarding in the USA.
For sure.
And
well,
so
depends
Yeah.
on the client, but yeah.
But I mean, for the most part.
The objective of this is to reach that speed. So most probably it's going to be working in an industrial environment, which most probably is going to be needing the guarded for sure.
But the point of the matter, and I've always said this as well, the company, and it sounds like we may be realizing this, the company, be it industrial or collaborative company, that realizes that at least in the United States, most people don't look for collaborative robots because they want them to set between people. Yeah. They look at collaborative robots because of that direct teach capability, but then they still want to close the door on it, undo the e-stops, reset the safety stuff, and tell it to move and have it perform at industrial-like speeds and accuracies. Yeah. But that from a training standpoint, as far as keeping your staff trained, which has been a huge challenge, especially since COVID. Again, because it's easier to remember that all I have to do is hold this button and move it a little bit, and when I let go, that'll be the new point that we need.
And they even have colors, so green means record, blue means move. That's it.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. All right, we got to keep moving.
Yes.
We're getting.
So what I want to do is I want to talk about a couple of quick customer success stories.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And because at the end of the day, we're sitting here, and I can talk about elite robots robots in general all day long. But some of the things that give some ideas to some folks out there that you all have seen, but just in general that we're seeing in the market. We talked about the coffee shops and that kind of thing, the bartenders. But for our audience in industrial automation, what kind of things are you all you seeing? I mean, real applications. What you're allowed to tell us.
Yeah.
That to give some ideas of how they can use a collaborative robot.
The sky is the limit for sure.
Yeah.
You can see all these kind of applications that you are having somebody that you can level up his capacities, and instead of having some repetitive work, like everything that you have somebody moving one thing to another place, or just sticking labels to the product after the production, or doing handling in odd angles into machines that you need to have an operator to go inside. So everything that you can first mitigate the risk of human labor, the tedious work, everything that you can improve your efficiency and reduce cost of operation. These all are the scenarios that you can have. So we have robots right now in the automotive, for example, testing the buttons of the horn. Previously, you have a person get the horn and beep, okay, good, pass it. Not good. Go ahead. So now you have a robot just with the stick, just pressuring and measuring. And the other thing that you cannot do by human is measuring how much force you need to press to activate the horn. So you can even improve your processes into a small application that now you have a robot, and before you have a person who was working on that for 15 years. Now that person who's working 15 years, I don't know how many years have left for working and before retiring, but you have this 5 or 10 more years of work, him supervising 5, 6, 7 robots. So instead of one horn, you're testing 7, 8 horns at a time.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So we have more.
Brandology. I like it.
So the 4 reasons, and I have to look down. My 4 reasons for to automate, why you would automate anything, robots or whatever. You mentioned a bunch of them just then. Quality consistency, decreased cycle time, or increases in production. So increased throughput, where we're now managing with one person 7 horn testers
Yeah.
instead of that one person being the tester. And then reclassification of labor, that also one person's overseeing all these robots. But even in addition, if that person's not the person for overseeing the robots, there are a number, as we talked about, the mitten, the blindfold, there's a number of classifications that don't fall into there, that it doesn't make cost sense to automate, but now you have a person to do it. And as long as it's safe and all this kind of thing. And then finally, flexibility of changeover. And so that's where... and you know what should be? There should be a fifth one.
Yeah.
And that's environmental challenges, because you talked about reaching inside of the machine.
Yeah.
So there's the the ergonomic part of that repetitive task, but also if they're reaching inside of something that's an acid bath, or high temperature, hot, anything like that.
Yeah.
Robots can reach in that all day long. But a person, you got to limit that.
I got a perfect example. Right now, we're having a robot working in one brand of soda beverage that before they clean the tanks, they need to pour some of the new chemicals to make the new product. But the workers there only last 3 months, and then they go to the clinic with lungs problems.
Oh.
And they didn't realize it was the vapes when you're pouring that.
Pouring the stuff in,
They inhale this one, and after 3 months they start getting problems with the lungs, and now they have a robot just standing there and they bring the buckets, and the robot just pouring the buckets. So the guys reduce the risk for the workers, and improve the production, because it's simple tasks like that. This is why cobots are meant to be.
And that's and that forward thinking of how we can utilize something like a collaborative robot for that is what I love. So let's keep talking. So I'm now the plant manager.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey guy, I'm the guy with the checkbook. I'm the guy that that's going to get yelled at by the board of directors. We've got to keep our people happy. How's all this is going to make me money?
Well, one of the things is the cost.
Okay.
If you compare the investment for a robotics, industrial robots to a cobot, is significantly less in introducing a cobot into your plant.
Now, let me stop you right there. There are some brands, some that we may or may not represent, that have both industrial lines and collaborative lines.
Yes.
And they do have industrial options that are less than the collaborative line. That is a purely industrial robot. So you can get an industrial robot for less, but that was before we knew about Elite. and so traditionally, for me as the plant president, I've gone through this before. We've heard this before. I ran the ROIs. I did all that kind of stuff, and there's just no way because robots always cost too much.
Yeah.
Well,
and you're talking about on those kind of scenarios, you're talking about return of investment in years.
Yes, years, and we need our return. If it's not better than 3, we don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
If it's 2, we're going to have budget meetings and maybe get it on next year's budget. If it's 1, maybe we do it this year. But we really would like to see 6 to 8 months on return on investment.
And that's where we're working. That's the range we are.
Yeah.
If you compare our prices to any of our competitors, we are at least between 40 to 60% less than that.
What do you mean, Moritz? Now, I've heard it the other way. So give me an example. And this, guys, is what I refer to as the game changer. Right?
Yeah, because like I say before in the introduction of the company, our product, or we are, as a company, we're meant to make products accessible, cost-effective to the people without compromising quality. Because we design everything. We are the one who take care of the quality by ourselves, committed to that. And we can reach those kind of pain points of price points. For example, you can find a similar model equivalent to 10 kilograms. Our CS series is 12 kilograms. You can find those in any brand, just whatever brand you find in the market.
Of collaborative robot.
Of collaborative robots.
Yeah.
10 kilograms capacity, you find it on the end user price about 50K,
55,000, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ours is going to be around 25.
Yeah.
27.
And that's unheard of. And and
remember, you're talking about only price of the product. Then goes to the maintenance, the training, this all add-ons. We don't charge for that.
Right.
Like I say,
Training
free
is free.
training, support 35,000 hours of operation in hours of the robot, not in time.
Robot hours.
Yes.
Which equates to, on most shifts, we were talking about 3 shifts a day.
3.9 years.
Yeah, roughly almost 4 years. Warranty. Yeah. And where's the stock?
The stock is here, just 30 minutes away from where we are recording this
in the
place.
United States of America.
Yeah.
In Knoxville, Tennessee. Hey, go Vols.
Yeah, go Vols.
And so the inventory's here. Quick changeover. We worry about downtime. So what steps is Elite taking to help me, the plant manager, get past this downtime? Because that's my most expensive.
Before the downtime, I would like to mention about the lead time.
Okay.
This is one of the concerns that you mentioned. We have the stock here, but either if we don't have the stock, we have 5 sets of each models in the stock in the United States for fast delivery. Bigger models, like I mentioned before, we have 200 sets a week capacity or production capacity. Okay, so this means in 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks, we have 200 robots in the United States without any problem. Okay, that first. The second is because we always hear in our clients, here in the end users, we improve and we are continuing innovating and getting these decisions that for probably in the market requires fast. Then we launch this policy. We call it 10+1.
Yeah, I love this.
10+1. Yeah, why we get to this number 10. Usually, the projects in each manufacturer or company, they require usually 10 is the number that they can implement in 1 year. So we figure out that for them, the most important part is the 0 downtime.
Yeah.
Okay, do not have downtime into your processes, because if you have downtime, we talk already, we are reducing your efficiency, cost, you're not being cost effective. And what we solve with that, we say, okay, if you get 10 robots, we're gonna give you 1 for free there in your stock, in your facility.
Yeah, so you get your spare part for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
And again, these are game changer things.
And then this is not going to cover the spare parts. No, this is the robot who's going to be as a backup for you to swap it, to not have downtime. Meanwhile, our technical support comes and cover the warranty of that broken robot in case we have. Until now, that's another thing I like to mention. We have for all the robots that we have deployed worldwide, we only have 10% of failure reports, which those 10% are only merely 99% of related to software, which is without upgrade, that's it. We upgraded, 5 minutes upgrade. They have USB, you put the new version, you upgrade it, in 5 minutes you have your upgraded your robot. And that other 1% is related to hardware. That from that 1%, 99% is human interaction.
Yeah.
They collide the robot with a wall. They
run over it with a forklift.
Or let it fall. The robot just crash the robot basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or they try to do maintenance in a collaborative robot and change fluids and pour some oil on the joints, over the joints, happened to us in some countries I don't want to mention.
Yeah.
So if you see our reliability is one of the highest in the world right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, we are rolling into 1 hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
Wow. It's been exciting.
We
It
have
doesn't seem
talked
that
and
long.
talked.
And we say 35 minutes.
Well, so just to kind of wrap some things up and kind of give a quick closing remarks. I think that's the biggest thing that has the big game changer is it's always been a challenge for again, this is not a salesy type comment. This is a adoption type comment for a lot of plant managers and plant engineers and even maintenance managers, whatnot, to get across to their management or to justify the cost. Cost has always come into play.
Yes.
And so we're always having to really start looking at ROI, do those calculations in such a way. And it's according to how you count. Some companies, I've met a few companies that don't count downtime as a cost.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. I'll just leave it at that because it is very much a cost because nothing's going out the door. Now, when you miss the truck, suddenly everybody realizes it. But downtime is certainly a thing. Also, a lot of times I think people think of robots as replacing people, and from a management standpoint, that is something that you can consider because, again, to your illustration, you had 7 horn testing machines and 7 people, and you were able to manage that now with 7 robots and 1 person overseeing those robots in those cells. So certainly you can have a reclassification of labor, but I don't think, even though there's some that still use that old pre-COVID ROI calculation, it needs to be looked at a bit more in terms of availability of labor and resources. So it gives us that value to move out the plant. And then, of course, the ongoing support cost. And so I call it OSC. I just came up with that today. The overall support cost. And so what are those? You mentioned some of those with training, with the downtime management. How do we get past that? The 10+1 program, that kind of thing. And then also spare parts. The fact that there is factory stock in the U.S. for U.S. users is huge.
For new set and for spare parts, for both of them.
And so, but but to your point, that will not replace. It's not meant to replace your spare parts inventory. If you have critical processes, you need to have spare parts on the shelf. But if you use your spare part, your spare joint, whatever, and something else happens to another robot, which is probably a lower probability, we would hope, there is the factory inventory in the U.S. You don't have to deal with customs and all those kind of things that we've dealt with in the past.
Yes.
So those are things that to me wrap up the reason why Elite is a game changer and now brings about the opportunity for plants across this United States of America to consider, as we have many of our customers, that we can now, it's attainable. Now automation is attainable because of the cost point, because now that ROI is 6 to 8 months and not years, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we are hoping to be the leaders on the collaborative robot. I think we're going very well with the support of all of you guys, always with us, and listening to your thought, listening to what the end users needs, improving constantly innovation. And I think that's our mission, to be sustainable in time, maintaining cost effective, maintaining good service. That is something that we also like to mention, that we try to get as close service as we can. We don't have any kind of like software or website that you need to open tickets to get the customer support. No, you're usually going to have our team's telephone number, contact directly. We're going to be showing you on your facilities very constant, and that's how we work.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the mix of all the decisions and all the plans that we are doing are getting us to get that path on being the global leader of collaborative robots in the next years.
Well, so really quickly, tell us a little bit about where's Elite going to be. I know we talked a bit about it. Are you all going to be at IMTS?
Okay, yes. In this region, I cover North and South America. Okay, but we're planning to go to IMTS. We're planning to go to PAC Expo. We are scoping to go to the Anaheim Industrial Conference. In Mexico, we're going to be with the transformation of the MES Hanover trade show there. We're going to be holding several kind of activities. We are looking forward to start doing open house and bring some of our all-in-one solutions. We didn't spoke about also the palletizing, the welding station, all these things that we're offering right now, the CNC machine tending all-in-one solution. Our plan is to, in the second semester, start doing a tour. They're visiting together with our distributors, end users, and showing all these kind of all built-in solutions available for them, so they can just plug and play and roll out, basically, and start to holding some webinars as well. We want to start being more present on the social network. We are actually, this is a formal invitation for elliTek to participate with us in one of the webinars this year. Let's choose a topic, let's start to working on, and let's see how we can work together in that webinar that we can broadcast worldwide.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
We can translate it into different languages in Germany, Japan, and Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and we broadcast it for everybody in the world. Okay,
Nice.
so that's something of the activities we're going to be doing this year.
Well, I'm proud
Very
that
nice.
we got to be a part of your kickoff because
Yeah.
so I will say to our elliTek Automation Nation, I want to thank you guys. We have nearly eclipsed 9,000 downloads on our,
No.
8,000.
Yeah.
8,000. Well, we're going 8,000 is closer to
No
9
worries.
than
After this, you're going to have the
That's
9,000.
right.
there you go. So we have we're coming up on 8,000 downloads. That's right. And so we want to thank you guys for your all's interest. Granted, if you love what you hear, like and share. Also, tell us a little bit about scheduling the demo.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Moritz. So if you call and schedule a demo with one of our field sales engineers, they will bring you one of these
Yep.
nifty little
Here,
things.
let me have that.
Okay.
My camera's a little closer, so I don't know if y'all know what our stuff is, but this is a nifty little desk robot.
It's really cute.
Little CS.
I have a magnet.
Yes, we have
I
magnets.
used
as
to
well.
have it in the fridge with Post-it.
Yeah.
So every time I need to do something important, my wife put the Post-it on it because I only look robots. So if I see a robot, you're gonna get my attention. So that's the way she called my attention.
And that's while supplies last.
While supplies last.
Yeah.
That's right. So limited time
Yes.
only. But certainly do reach out to elliTek. Go to our website, things of that nature. We'll have all that in the wrap
Yeah,
up.
we'll have links to Elite
Yeah,
Robots.
you can find us on eliterobots.com. You
Mhm.
can find us on LinkedIn,
Yes.
the same as Elite Robots. You can find myself on Moritz Garroz on LinkedIn, and gonna be there. Our social networks, all our social networks, Twitter, Instagram, X, Instagram,
Yeah.
TikTok. I think all of them are Elite
Yeah.
Robots.
Yeah.
So you can find us everywhere.
Perfect.
We are
And
there.
I'll put
Perfect.
the links in the show notes for you.
All right, well, guys, we've taken a little bit over our time, shooting for our 35 to 40%, but our 40 minutes. But we've had plenty of great things to talk about, and I do think that this is a game changer. So hopefully you enjoyed it. We appreciate you sticking with us going forward. You talked about some of the all-in-one solutions, the welding cells, the palletizing cells, things of that nature. So here's a challenge for our audience. We could put together a live action, maybe not live, but at least outside of the studio,
Yeah.
and prove some of those things out and see them in our shop or something like that. Is that something that you all would love to see? If you think that would be beneficial as far as going through the setups and what's possible, and who knows what else might happen,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
and we now have a new feature where you can text the show. So just text us yes.
Oh, yeah?
And let us know that you would like to see that, and we'll.
Don't forget to press the like
That's right.
and subscribe
Like and
right
subscribe,
here.
ring the bell, all those kind of things. And certainly for those of you watching us on video, I got a different camera now. They got a camera. Thanks for joining us on that. So industrial automation, it doesn't have to be difficult.
Always easier than before.
Moritz,
like
I
it.
really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy. I want to come back again.
Yeah.
I talked for 2 more hours.
Yeah, well, we'll have to break it up. All right.
Make it
Thanks,
scary.
guys.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you all. Hey guys, thanks for checking out today's episode of Industrial Automation It Doesn't Have To. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure you give us a rating that's pretty doggone high, and do that everywhere you listen, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget about our website. That's www.ellitek.com. That's ELLITEK.com. If you want to reach out to us there, you can fill out our contact form. We'd appreciate it. Also, you can email us at info@ellitek.com. And certainly for those of you that still like to dial the phone, give us a call, 865-409-1555. We'd love to hear from you.